You know, usually when we talk about a rescue mission, there is this very specific expectation regarding the resources you use.
Right, like a highly trained tactical team or something.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
If an allied nation is, trying to extract hostages from a hostile, fortified enemy territory, they do not just send anybody. You send a specialized extraction unit.
You want peak physical condition.
Right. You want tactical precision. You want the best gear available, satellite imagery, a flawless communication network. It is this highly calculated binary operation where every single variable is controlled to guarantee success. You depend on the supreme competence of the personnel you send.
Because it is entirely dependent on measurable human capability. You assess the sheer might, the sheer force of the enemy, and you counter it with an overwhelming superior force of your own.
That is the standard protocol. But then, you step into the biblical narrative of deliverance and that whole human-centric paradigm just shatters into a million pieces.
Oh, completely.
We're looking at a scenario that is, practically speaking, entirely absurd. It defies every logical metric we use to measure viability. So welcome to a new deep dive on the podcast named Reformed Thinking.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today we are taking an extensive look at Exodus 3.men through 12, drawing from two rigorously structured theological treatises. Our mission for you, the listener, is to analyze the massive intersection of God's absolute sovereignty, our own glaring human inadequacy, and, well, the true aim of biblical redemption.
And we guarantee to extract the most significant insights without relying on modern, superficial self-help tropes.
Yeah, we are not going to be looking for your inner hero today.
No, definitely not, because the text we are examining obliterates the very concept of an inner hero.
It leaves zero room for human boasting, right?
None at all. When you look at the mechanics of this rescue mission, the flesh has absolutely nothing to cling to. It systematically strips away every credential we usually rely on for confidence.
So, to grasp the absolute weight of God's mandate here, we cannot just treat this as some floating spiritual metaphor. We first have to anchor this narrative firmly in space and time.
Yeah, we have to look at the massive historical stage where this collision of empires actually occurs.
Right, so we are talking about the year 1446 BC.
Which is a highly specific date.
It is, and we get that specific date from the internal chronological data of Torah Kings 6.1, which places the Exodus 480 years before the fourth year of Solomon's reign.
And, that specific historical anchor completely defies the assumptions of modern liberal historical critical scholarship.
Oh yeah, they hate that date.
They really do. A lot of academic circles attempt to late date the Pentateuch, pushing it into the post-exilic era, reducing the entire Exodus to a nationalistic founding myth or like an allegory.
Right.
But maintaining that early objective date of 1446 BC is vital. Our faith is built upon objective historical acts of God unfolding in real time. We are talking about genuine geopolitical realities.
Because during this period, the ancient Near East was completely dominated by the Egyptian 18th dynasty.
The New Kingdom era.
Yeah, the New Kingdom era. And when we say dominated, we need to paint a picture for you of what that actually looked like on the ground. We are not talking about a moderately successful nation.
Not at all. I mean, the New Kingdom was an era defined by aggressive imperial expansion. Egypt was the supreme military force of the ancient world.
A total juggernaut.
Exactly. You have a highly centralized, absolute state. They possessed vast resources, monumental architecture, and a highly advanced military machine centered around the deadly innovation of the horse-drawn war chariot.
Which was basically the ancient equivalent of a tank.
Pretty much. Furthermore, the Pharaoh was not considered a regular political ruler. He was worshipped as the living embodiment of the god Horus.
So you're dealing with a guy who actually believes he's divine.
Right. And the oppression of the Israelites was likely overseen by Thutmose III, who was a completely ruthless, brilliant military tactician. He aggressively expanded Egypt's borders through brutal campaigns in places like Megiddo.
Wow.
And the Pharaoh of the actual Exodus, the one Moses would directly collide with, was Amenhotep II.
Okay, so you have this colossal military and economic machine, a civilization built on the backs of slave labor,
Yeah?
led by a man who literally believes he is a god.
Yeah.
And then you look at Moses. To understand who is being sent into this imperial meat grinder, we have to trace the providence of God over an 80-year period.
Right, because Moses has this incredibly unique background.
He does. You have 40 years of absolute luxury and elite education in Egypt. Moses is raised in the pinnacle of human civilization.
Yeah.
Acts 7 tells us he was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians.
We are talking about advanced mathematics, astronomy, rhetoric, military strategy.
All the best training money could buy. But then, that elite preparation is followed by 40 years of total obscurity.
Yeah, just a massive drop-off. He is out tending his father-in-law Jethro's flocks in the desolate, scorching wilderness of Midian.
The contrast could not be sharper. Moses goes from the center of the greatest superpower on earth to the absolute periphery.
From the palace to the dirt.
Right. He goes from giving orders in a highly structured society to chasing wandering animals in a wasteland. And this long desert exile was the precise providential school of God.
Because God deliberately stripped away Moses' reliance on his flesh.
Yeah, his elite education, his physical strength. We saw that physical strength fail miserably in his earlier attempt to bring about deliverance by murdering an Egyptian back in Exodus chapter 2.
He thought he could act as a vigilante savior.
He tried the strategy of a self-styled revolution. He tried to use his own fleshly initiative, and it completely backfired, forcing him into exile.
And what I find so compelling is the specific occupation God chose for this stripping process. Shepherding was detestable to the Egyptians.
Oh, absolutely repulsive to them. Yeah, Genesis 46 tells us that explicitly. So God takes this highly educated prince and gives him an occupation that the Egyptian elite would find disgusting.
It completely crushed his pride. It made him a passive, empty vessel. To the sophisticated Egyptian mind, a shepherd was at the very bottom of the social hierarchy.
And if we connect this historical reality to the broader theological context, this entire situation is operating on a massive covenantal backdrop.
Right. God is acting on the Abrahamic promise from Genesis 15.
Right.
Centuries earlier, Yahweh had solemnly declared to Abraham that his descendants would be sojourners in a foreign land, that they would be afflicted for 400 years, but that he would bring them out with great possessions.
So God is descending to act in direct, absolute faithfulness to his national promises to the physical ethnic seed of Abraham.
It is not some spontaneous act of pity because things suddenly got out of hand.
No, it's covenant faithfulness unfolding with chronological precision. But, looking at the instrument God uses, I look at this 40-year timeout in Midian, and you know what this makes me think of?
What's that?
Imagine a master craftsman who takes a shiny, expensive, state-of-the-art carving tool, but instead of using it while it is razor sharp, he deliberately dulls it. He grinds the edge down on purpose to prove that the coming masterpiece is the result of the maker's supreme skill, not the tool's inherent sharpness.
That's a great way to look at it.
But that raises a massive question for me. Why wait until the man is 80 years old and seemingly past his prime? I mean, why not use the energetic 40-year-old prince who actually had inside access to the Egyptian court?
The guy who knew the layout of the palace and understood the political dynamics.
Yeah, why not him?
Well, that question cuts to the core of how divine providence operates, and the answer establishes God's absolute sovereignty over timing. God waits until Moses is 80 because human impossibility is the precise theater where divine sovereignty is most clearly displayed. An energetic 40-year-old prince would have received the glory. If Moses had succeeded then, the deliverance would have been attributed to human diplomacy or a clever military coup or political leverage.
The world would have said, look at the brilliant strategy of Moses.
Precisely. By waiting until Moses has zero earthly leverage, zero political influence, and zero physical prime left, God ensures that the resulting victory belongs exclusively to Yahweh.
That chronological certainty really forces us to look at the geopolitical reality of that specific moment, which leads us right into the sudden, irresistible command God issues from the burning bush.
Section 2 of our outline, essentially.
Right. We see this sovereign summons in Exodus 3.0, but to contextualize verse 10, we have to look slightly backwards at verses 7 through 9.
Or we see those incredible verbs.
Yes. The text records 4 active verbs of divine focus. God heard their groaning, God remembered his covenant, God saw the people of Israel, and God knew their affliction.
The initiative is entirely divine.
Entirely. Moses did not initiate this encounter. Moses did not climb the mountain to persuade God to care about the slaves in Egypt.
The sequence of those verbs is vital. God has seen, heard, known, and come down. Therefore, he now sends. The command to Moses is the appointed instrument of an already declared compassion.
Right.
And when we examine the syntax of the command in verse 10, it is staggering. Come now, therefore, and I will send you.
It features a double imperative.
It begins with the transitional adverbial phrase and imperative, and now go.
It sounds like there is zero room for negotiation there. It is a sovereign mandate. It is not an invitation to a dialogue.
It is a unilateral decree coupled with a divine determination, and I will send you to Pharaoh. The Hebrew verb used here for to send is shalach.
Shalach.
Yeah. In the context of ancient Near Eastern treaties, this verb carries massive legal and diplomatic weight. Moses is being deployed as an authorized ambassador.
A legal plenipotentiary, basically.
Spot on. He does not go as an independent political reformer. He is sent to speak with the direct, unmediated authority of the King of Kings.
So if Pharaoh rejects Moses, he is not brushing off a delusional 80-year-old shepherd. He is committing high treason against the self-existent Lord of the universe. He is rejecting the sovereign monarch who sent the ambassador.
And God adds this highly specific phrase in the mandate, that you may bring forth my people.
My people.
Yahweh claims absolute ownership of the Israelites long before Pharaoh actually releases them.
Oh, that's huge. Because Pharaoh thinks they belong to the Egyptian economy. He thinks they are his property, his brickmakers.
This confronts the tyrant's false claim directly. God's covenant claim is prior to and supreme over Pharaoh's economic exploitation. And, this reality severely undercuts any Arminian or semi-Pelagian ideas of human cooperation in the work of redemption.
Wait, let's slow down and break that theological contrast down for the listener.
Yeah.
Because those terms get thrown around, but we need to explain how they actually function in this context.
Sure. Arminian and semi-Pelagian anthropologies falsely assume that God's redemptive actions are contingent upon human willingness, choice, or cooperative faith.
Right. They present salvation as a collaborative venture between God and the autonomous individual.
Think of a man drowning in the ocean and God throws life preserver. In that theological model, God does the saving, but the man has to actively choose to grab the rope.
The success of the rescue depends on the drowning man's cooperation.
But this text presents a monergistic divine decree. Monergism means God works alone to accomplish his will.
It is not throwing a rope to a drowning man. It is pulling a corpse from the bottom of the ocean and breathing life into it.
Exactly. God does not invite Moses to a brainstorming session. He does not ask for a volunteer. He issues an imperial mandate from the court of heaven. The success of the mission is not driven by human preparation, but by the irresistible authority of God's spoken word.
Okay, I have to object here on behalf of anyone listening who might be wrestling with this.
Go for it.
If the mandate is this absolute, and God already owns the Israelites, and God possesses all the omnipotence in the universe, why involve Moses at all?
It's a fair question.
I mean, it feels like God is setting Moses up to be a completely unnecessary middleman. Doesn't this absolute sovereignty turn the human instrument into an unthinking robot?
That objection strikes at the heart of how we understand divine providence. God using a mediator does not turn the human into a robot. Rather, it elevates the human to participate in the divine decree.
Oh, interesting.
God delights in using weak instruments precisely because it demonstrates that the sufficiency is of God and not of man. The Westminster Confession of Faith clarifies that God ordains whatsoever comes to pass, yet he does so in a way that establishes the liberty and contingency of second causes.
So Moses' will is not bypassed.
Right. It is sovereignly overcome and enlisted. His faculties, his voice, his mind, they are all engaged. And we see the reality of Moses' free, deeply flawed human will in his immediate reaction to the command.
Which brings us to this incredible paralysis of self-focus. In Exodus 3.11, God issues this majestic cosmic command, and Moses responds with the first of 5 objections. Who am I? It is the default cry of the fallen human heart when confronted with divine holiness.
It really is. Moses completely shifts his focus. He looks away from the unapproachable majesty of the burning bush, and he turns his gaze entirely inward. He starts calculating his own lack of status.
Yeah. He assesses his lack of rhetorical skill. He looks at the sheer impossibility of walking into the most dominant court on earth and leading a massive congregation of skeptical slaves out into a desert.
The Hebrew text highlights this intense existential crisis. He uses the pronoun anoki, placing the ultimate emphasis on his own identity.
Anoki.
And when we consult the Septuagint, the ancient Greek translation of the Old Testament, the linguistic detail is staggering. The translators rendered this phrase as tis aimi ego.
And why is that specific Greek phrase significant for our understanding of Moses' mindset?
Because in classical extra-biblical Greco-Roman literature, like in the works of Homer and the histories of Herodotus, Iene, Ego, is the specific language of tragic, fatalistic despair. It is used by victims of blind destiny who view themselves as completely helpless. For instance, in Homer's Iliad, when a hero is facing an unavoidable, crushing fate decreed by the gods, this is the language they use to express their doom.
That is wild.
Moses is standing before the living, self-existent creator of the universe, a god of meticulous providence, and yet he adopts the secular idiom of a pagan, tragic hero. He completely forgets the sender and obsesses over his own frailty.
That is staggering. He is looking at a bush that is burning but not consumed, a visible, physical manifestation of divine holiness, and his response is to wallow in self-pity.
Yeah.
This question, who am I, masquerades as humility. It sounds pious to our ears. It sounds like a man who knows his limits.
Yeah.
But it is actually a massive expression of unbelief.
It is measuring the viability of God's objective promise by the standard of creaturely resources.
It is subtle rebellion. Unbelief says, I am unable, therefore I need not obey.
You know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
It is like a five-star general walking up to a foot soldier and handing him a direct, non-negotiable order to take a specific hill. But instead of marching, the soldier freezes. He looks down and starts obsessing over whether his boots are polished enough for the mission. He starts wondering if his uniform is pressed correctly or if he has enough rations in his pack.
Right. It looks like he respects the general's high standards, but he is actually just ignoring the direct order.
Exactly. So how do we differentiate between genuine, godly humility and this type of faithless, inward-looking paralysis?
Well, genuine humility looks at human weakness and then immediately looks outward to the Creator for strength. Faithless paralysis looks at human weakness and stays there.
That's the difference.
Pride says, I am able. Unbelief says, I am unable, therefore I cannot. Biblical faith says, I am completely unable, but God is with me, therefore I must.
True humility does not argue with the sovereign command. It submits to it, trusting that the one who commands will also supply the necessary grace for the execution of that command.
And we see God directly address this in the very next verse, bypassing Moses' self-esteem issues entirely.
Right, in Exodus 3:1-2.
God answers Moses with a covenantal indicative. He says, certainly I will be with you.
Notice what God does not say here. He does not say, Moses, you are more capable than you think. Let's look at your resume.
He does not validate Moses' intrinsic worth.
No. He does not praise his hidden leadership potential or his past education in Egypt. He does not assure Moses that he still has the political savvy to pull this off.
He does not even give him a detailed map of the plagues that are about to happen.
Nothing like that. God answers a question about Moses with a statement about God. Moses asks, who am I? God answers, I will be with you.
And the Hebrew word used here is EII, I will be.
Which is huge.
Yeah, this is a direct theological precursor to the grand revelation of God's name in verse 14, I am who I am, Ei Asher Ehyeh.
By promising this, Yahweh is pledging his absolute self-existent, unchanging being to the mission. The success of the Exodus is anchored in the very metaphysics of God's self-existent nature.
God relocates the sufficiency of the mission entirely from the mediator to the sender. But let me push back a little on how that phrase lands today.
Sure.
I will be with you might sound to modern ears like a nice sentimental greeting card slogan.
A warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, a warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you're having a bad day. How did this specific phrase practically function as an ironclad guarantee against the chariots, the spears, and the absolute brutality of the most ruthless empire on earth?
It functions as an ironclad guarantee because of the ontological reality of who is speaking. This is not a vague spiritual sentiment or an emotional crutch. This is the active pledge of the omnipotent God.
Right.
When the self-existent creator pledges his presence, that presence includes his authority, his protective wrath, his wisdom, and his absolute rule over every molecule in the Egyptian empire.
Even over Pharaoh's armies.
Right. Pharaoh's chariots are made of wood and iron, both created and sustained by the very God who is standing with Moses. Because God is, and because he has promised to be with his mediator, it is ontologically impossible for the mission to fail. The guarantee is as strong as God's own existence.
So what does this all mean for the specific outcome? God guarantees this success, but he also defines what that success actually looks like.
Yes, he gives a sign.
God provides a sign to Moses. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on this mountain.
This sign is critical to understand. It is retrospective, it is future-oriented, and it is corporate.
Break that down.
The Hebrew verb used indicates plural corporate action. It is not just a private spiritual experience for Moses, it is for the entire gathered assembly of Israel. And it defines the true aim of the Exodus.
Because the deliverance was never about just political liberation.
No, it was not about achieving secular autonomy or setting up a democracy or finding a place where they could just be left alone.
It was a transfer of lordship.
That's it.
They are moving from the cruel, back-breaking bondage of Pharaoh to the holy, regulated worship of Yahweh at Sinai. Israel is not redeemed to imitate Egypt under new management.
No sinner is saved into spiritual neutrality. Freedom from Pharaoh means strict covenantal submission to Yahweh.
And from a strict cessationist perspective, the structure of this sign is incredibly telling. God's sign required Moses to walk entirely by faith in the objective spoken word of God before seeing the physical proof.
The confirmation comes after the obedience. Moses has to go back to Egypt, face Pharaoh, endure the plagues, lead the people through the Red Sea, and walk into the desolate wilderness before this sign is actually fulfilled.
That is a direct confrontation to the cravings we see in modern Christianity.
Oh, absolutely.
So many people today want daily subjective signs. They want to hear audible voices or see visions or get some emotional goosebump to validate their decisions before they take a single step of obedience.
They want to lay out a fleece for every minor life choice.
Right. But this text shows that believers must rest on objective written promises.
We do not require novel, subjective revelations to validate God's commands. The written word of God is our absolute anchor. We walk by faith in what has been spoken, not by sight.
But I have to ask, a sign that happens after the terrifying mission is completed seems completely backward.
It does.
Isn't a sign supposed to reassure you before you jump out of the plane? If you're a paratrooper, you want to know the parachute works before you leap. Why does God structure his assurances this way?
Because God's goal is to cultivate dependent faith, not to provide empirical data for human calculation.
Wow.
If God proved everything up front, there would be no requirement for dependent trust. Structuring the sign this way demands that Moses place his full confidence in the character of the promiser rather than in the visible circumstances. It necessitates faith in the ultimate mediator.
Which naturally bridges our discussion from the historical Moses to the glorious fulfillment in Jesus Christ.
Section 6.
Right. If God structured Moses' mission to require blind trust in a future sign, it begs the question, did anyone ever get this right? Did any mediator ever accept the call without arguing?
And the answer is yes.
That brings us to the Christological lens. We have to look at the greater Moses and the greater Exodus. Moses is the historical type, a shadow of what is to come. Jesus Christ is the antitype, the perfect reality.
The author of Hebrews makes this explicit. Moses was a servant in the house, but Christ is the son over the house.
The missions are categorically different in scale, yet typologically linked. Moses freed a single ethnic nation from geopolitical tyranny.
Right, but Christ frees the elect drawn from every tribe, tongue, and nation from the cosmic tyranny of sin, Satan, death, and divine wrath.
Moses brought Israel through the physical waters of the Red Sea. Christ brings his people through the waters of eternal judgment via his substitutionary atonement.
And going back to that promise of divine presence, I will be with you. We look at the concept of Emmanuel, God with us.
Yeah.
Christ ontologically embodies the promise of Exodus 3.12 through the incarnation. God did not just speak from a burning bush. The eternal word took on human flesh and tabernacled among us.
The contrast in obedience is breathtaking. Where Moses hesitated, argued, and resisted the call with 5 distinct objections, Christ actively embraced his mission from eternity past.
The Father sent the Son, and the Son did not ask, "Who am I?" He knew his identity, and he knew his mission.
Bring us to the Garden of Gethsemane to see this contrast fully realized. The terror Christ faced there was infinitely worse than Pharaoh.
Pharaoh could only kill the body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Christ was facing the unmitigated, holy wrath of God against the sins of the elect.
The human nature of Christ experienced staggering, crushing agony in Gethsemane. He sweated drops of blood. Yet, confronted with that terrifying cup of wrath, Christ bowed in absolute, flawless submission.
He prayed, "Not my will, but yours be done."
Moses tried to evade his calling. Christ set his face like flint toward Jerusalem. Christ's active obedience in fulfilling the law and his passive obedience in enduring the cross guarantees the eternal deliverance of his people.
Imagine a brilliant doctor treating the severe symptoms of a fatal disease in one specific hospital ward.
Okay.
That was Moses' historical deliverance. It brought real, tangible relief to those specific patients at that specific time in Egypt. But Christ's redemptive work is the permanent, global eradication of the disease itself.
It cures the root cause of the cosmic curse.
It does not just free slaves from brickmaking. It frees rebels from hell.
That is a highly accurate way to grasp the magnitude of the antitype over the type. Christ accomplishes perfectly what Moses could only prefigure imperfectly.
Recognizing the absolute perfection of Christ's work naturally forces us to examine how we operate today. These massive theological realities offer a devastating critique of the modern church's obsession with pragmatism.
Oh, they completely dismantle modern, pragmatic, seeker-sensitive church models.
They really do.
So much of contemporary evangelicalism relies on assessing felt needs, utilizing secular psychological theories, and leveraging entertainment to build massive crowds.
They measure the viability of holy mission against human resources, marketing budgets, demographic studies, and cultural relevance.
It is the exact same failure Moses had in verse 11.
Right.
Moses looked at his own lack of eloquence, his lack of status, and his 80-year-old body. The modern church looks at its lack of cultural approval, its lack of social media influence, and tries to rebrand itself to appear capable to the world.
It mimics Moses' failure perfectly. It is a cultural obsession with self-esteem dressed up as ministry. The world, and sadly much of the visible church, counsels looking inward to find an inner leader.
They tell you to leverage your natural talents to accomplish God's work.
But Scripture demands looking outward to the objective promise of God. Looking inward for confidence is a form of idolatry. It denies the complete sufficiency of the Creator and exalts the creature.
So what is the alternative? If we reject the pragmatic, entertainment-driven model that relies on our own sharpness, what are we left with?
We are left with the ordinary means of grace.
Yes.
God has appointed specific ordinary channels through which he strengthens his church. The expository preaching of the written word, corporate prayer, and the faithful administration of the sacraments.
We do not need high-tech stages, smoke machines, or sociological surveys to accomplish the work of God. We need the objective promise of his presence accompanying his preached word.
Let's bring this down to the individual listener level.
Okay.
If you are listening to this right now and you feel like you are in your own Midian, maybe you feel passed over, inadequate, or you are facing an overwhelming, terrifying mandate in your own life.
Right.
Say you are trying to lead your family through a devastating medical crisis, or you are called to stand for biblical truth in a completely hostile corporate workplace. How do you apply this text without falling into the trap of thinking you are the hero of your own personal Exodus story?
You apply it by recognizing that your inadequacy is an established, undeniable fact. It is not a problem to be solved by boosting your self-esteem.
You do not need to become a hero.
No, you need to rely on the mediator who has already conquered. You locate your obedience entirely in God's command rather than your personal adequacy. When the command is clear, self-inspection must not become a cover for disobedience.
You trust that the Lord who sends is the Lord who goes with his servants.
You lean entirely on the grace of Christ, knowing that his strength is made perfect in your weakness.
Your weakness is the platform for his strength. We have covered an immense amount of ground today, tracing this narrative from the historical sands of New Kingdom Egypt to the cosmic redemption achieved at Calvary, and bringing it right to the threshold of the modern church.
We have seen how human inadequacy is the precise staging ground for divine sovereignty.
Before we close, we want to leave you with a challenging paradox to chew on regarding the nature of freedom. The secular world insists that true freedom means throwing off all authority so you can rule yourself.
Autonomy is presented as the highest cultural virtue.
Be your own master, speak your own truth. Yet the entire Exodus narrative proves that autonomous freedom is an absolute illusion.
You are always submitting to someone or something. To live for self is delusion. To submit to the Lord is the only true liberty.
True freedom is found exclusively in total submission to the right master. To truly escape the soul-crushing slavery of Egypt, you must submit entirely to the holy yoke of Sinai. Thank you for joining us for this session of Reformed Thinking. Keep your eyes outward, trust the objective promise, and we'll see you next time.